These under-the-radar offensive linemen and this defensive end who hasn't played a collegiate snap yet headline the list of possible surprise Miami Hurricanes starters.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, and on this loaded episode, we'll talk about Mario Cristobal's mission. Second place last season, that was a start, but that wasn't the final destination. We'll talk about the top transfer portal players ever at the University of Miami, and hopefully there's a few coming in this season that can end up on that all-timers list. But we got some great questions, my friends, from the Everydayer Club, and remember, you can join the Everydayer Club free for a month with the code MARCH. Everydayer Dave asked me, hey, Donno, we've seen your depth chart, but who could you see breaking out as surprise starters for the Miami Hurricanes football team this season? I'll give you about a half dozen of them, Dave. And a couple of these I did have on my depth chart as like bold predictions to start this year, but a few others I didn't have up there at the top. But I will say, guys, every single year, going through spring ball, going through fall camp, there's always certain players that you didn't necessarily expect to rise as high as they do. And so I always come out of spring and fall with a few players that, like, man, I really underestimated this guy. This guy's going to be a starter. I mean, heck, I underestimated Malachi Toney at least a tad last year because I didn't necessarily see him as a day one starter against Notre Dame, and he got there. So I'll give you my surprises, and I'll start on the offensive line. Anytime you're replacing four starters from last year, with Matthew McCoy being the only full-time starter coming back, you're going to have hot competition battles everywhere, and there are certain players that either due to their experience level or their pedigree that we have them kind of penciled in as starters, right? I think all of us have Matthew McCoy and Samson Okunlola penciled in as starters. Most of us have, even as we've talked a lot about Jackson Cantwell, the 5-star recruit, top recruit in the country, even though he hasn't played a down in college yet, most of us have him penciled in. A lot of us have Ryan Rodriguez, kind of the assumed starting center this year. And then, maybe Jamal Merriweather, experienced, coming over from Georgia. He's been in college for a few years already. I think that's the five that, like, most of us kind of expect to be the starting five, but there's at least one, if not two, potential depth chart wreckers behind those guys. The first of those is Max Buchanan. Max Buchanan heading into his second year. I hear nothing but positives about the way he's performing in off-season workouts, the way he's really rising. And Buchanan, I think a reason why he's like the number one possible surprise starter is can potentially step in at multiple different positions, possibly could win the center competition, even though, again, Rodriguez, with his experience, you favor him there, but Max Buchanan is coming. And, he could win one of those open starting guard jobs easily. Like, if he outperforms Jamal Merriweather, Cristobal and Mirabal would not hesitate to play the best guy, even if he's less experienced than someone else. So Buchanan is someone to watch. Another guy, there's a few directions I could go when it comes to offensive linemen, because there's a lot of young, talented players there. But I continue to hear good things, and I continue to not talk enough on this show about incoming freshman Ben Congdon. When we were doing our episode yesterday, we talked to Leon Searcy, who's former legendary offensive tackle at Miami, and we were mostly talking with Leon about Jackson Cantwell and like what it's going to take for Cantwell between now and September to cement himself as a starting offensive lineman as a true freshman. And one of our commenters live on YouTube kept saying, like, hey guys, Ben Congdon is even better than Jackson Cantwell. I don't necessarily agree with that statement. I don't, but I will say it is a reminder that Congdon, incoming true freshman, is someone we don't talk about enough. I hear he's doing really well, and I love the fact that, at his high school, was at Tuscarawas Valley High School in the Midwest, was also a high-level heavyweight wrestler. I love the way that leverage and strength coming from wrestling can transfer over to offensive line play. And like, that's someone to watch, like someone really under the radar. Because when we talk about true freshman starters on the O-line, we're almost always talking about Jackson Cantwell. Ben Congdon is going to be someone to watch as well, and we'll see how he can perform, because you have surprises every single year, my friends. So those are a couple on the offensive line. I didn't have either of them as starters on my depth chart, but Buchanan especially would not shock me if he wins a starting job. At wide receiver, X receiver is the spot I think that's going to have some competition. And I put it on my depth chart. Most people don't have him number one on theirs. That's Josh Moore. Josh Moore, to me, the combination of size at 6'4", 215 pounds, with his rare ability to get contested balls the way he does, but also the speed to run the deep routes and get open on field. I think Moore, he's less experienced than the transfers Miami brought in, Dre Jacobs and Cam Vaughn, but Josh Moore, to me, has the physical goods. It's just about him putting it all together. So that's going to be someone to watch. And we would expect the other starting receivers, Cooper Barkate, who transferred in from Duke off of 1,100-plus yards, and he's played with Darian Mensah already. He's going to have a big advantage to start. And then Malachi Toney. Nobody taking Tony's job. We all know that. So the one to watch out for, I think, is Josh Moore as a possible starter this year. At tight end, I'm not ruling out Luka Gilbert. I'm not. We got Elijah Lofton. I think he's probably healthy by now, but he's coming off of that rib injury from the Ole Miss game. He couldn't play in the championship game. Not to mention Lofton being more of the Swiss Army knife. It wouldn't surprise me if Miami, with Luka Gilbert being the more traditional inline tight end, if he's like technically the tight end starter, but Lofton plays almost as many, if not more, snaps this year. I think there's definitely going to be a dynamic, and sometimes Miami has multiple tight ends on the field at one time, but I think Luka Gilbert as a possible surprise starter at tight end, that's something to watch out for. And even if that happens, I still think Elijah Lofton's going to play a lot. And I think Gavin Mueller is going to get some playing time as well. When I talk about surprise tight end starters, some of you are probably saying in the comments, maybe Gavin Mueller should be your guy. But I think Luka Gilbert at 6'7" with a big frame, really good blocker already, and I think he's got some soft hands as well. Would not shock me if Gilbert ends up starting at tight end. But, whoever starts there, whoever gets the most snaps, I just want tight end U to be back. I want all these guys to perform. I'm not playing favorites there. At defensive end, I mentioned in the opening, could it be someone taking one of those starting spots who hasn't played a single collegiate snap? All Miami fans' eyes will be on Hayden Lowe this coming season. Because, folks, I can recall watching fall practices last year before this player unfortunately got injured, like right before the season started. He had to miss the entire year with, I believe it was an ACL. It was a knee injury for sure. Hayden Lowe was really rising as a five-star true freshman last year before the injury cost him the season. So he was able to practice some, during the playoffs, so he was able to get back. Hopefully he's 100%, but if he's 90% right now, he'll be 100% by the season starts. That's going to be someone to watch out for. We all expect Damon Wilson to start at one defensive end spot with his proven production and SEC experience. And then the other spot, Marquise Lightfoot, I believe, is the favorite. And Armando Blunt is also up there. Miami's got some dudes. But Hayden, if you're talking about possible surprise starters, for me, Hayden Lowe is going to be someone to watch, because this guy, huge player at the high school level and was performing really well in practice before he got hurt. So I'm going to have him penciled in there. At will linebacker, Kamal Bonner, I think, is someone that, some people have him at the top of their depth chart, others don't. He didn't play much last year, mostly due to injuries, a former NC State transfer who came in last year. It seems to me like if healthy, he has the traits to complement Motore well, so you wonder if Kamal Bonner can do that. And then, at nickel in the defensive secondary, a lot of us, including me, have Omar Thornton penciled in as the starter at nickel. But I wonder if Damari Brown, who's got versatility to play multiple different positions in the defensive backfield, including outside corner. But Damari Brown, maybe he can win that job straight up and become a starter this year. So that's someone that I have just kind of to watch. And this outlines some of the hottest position battles that I'm going to be looking for starting in spring football and then culminating throughout fall camp. I also got a question. I want to answer this on the other side. I don't know. This is either really easy to answer or incredibly difficult. You guys can help me decide who will be the MVPs on offense and defense for the Hurricanes next year. And I'm also going to rank throughout the transfer portal era Miami's top transfers. You want to keep it locked because we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes.
I'm Kalia Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. It's officially tournament time, and the number one seeds are set. UConn is the number one overall seed at 34-0 and will headline Fort Worth Regional 1 at Dickies Arena. Joining the Fort Worth site as a top seed is Texas, leading Regional 3. Out west, UCLA enters at 31-1 and takes the top spot in Sacramento Regional 2, while South Carolina leads Sacramento Regional 4. The first round of the tournament tips off this Friday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Guys, college basketball is nonstop, and we got the tournament starting this week, so it's not stopping anytime soon. The big games, the tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from the early tip-offs to the late nights that our Canes are going to be on Friday. There's always action on the board, and now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. Ranked matchups, rivalry games. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see the slate playing out. And then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold. Ride with the Canes you've been riding with all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel. Play your game. Folks, I saw we just got a couple of new members this week, which is awesome. If you've been thinking about joining the Everydayer Club, join now with the code MARCH and get your first month free at either membership tier. So if it's free, I recommend going with the all-access tier. If you sign up before the NCAA tournament tips off tomorrow, you can compete against me. I'm about to fill out my bracket today. I'm very excited. In our men's and women's bracket pools on Discord, the winner in each will get $100 in Locked On merch. The rest of us can commiserate in the members-only chats as our brackets blow up. And as a member of the club, you get an ad-free version of this show, exclusive content, one-on-one texting. It's all free for a month with code MARCH at lockedoncanes.supercast.com. We'll see you there. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And by the way, we will have another episode. It's either going to be tonight or maybe tomorrow morning. I'm doing a crossover episode with Locked On Mizzou because we got that big matchup on Friday night. Miami basically playing a road game in St. Louis against the lower seed Missouri. We'll break it down and so much more on a crossover episode with Locked On Mizzou this week. We get a question from Daniel on the Everydayer Club who says, "Hey, Donno, who will be Miami's MVPs on offense and defense this coming season?" Yeah, okay. Well, when it comes to offensive MVP, like I'm trying not to overthink this. Malachi Toney or Darian Mensah, it's got to be one of those two, right? And it's like Toney, you expect to probably put up another 1,000-yard season. You know, he ended up through the playoffs with over 1,200 last year. It was remarkable. Double digits in total touchdowns last season. You know, one of the most productive receivers in the country, period. One of the probably the two most productive, certainly the most productive true freshman. So you think Toney's going to be up there, but then it's like the guy who's throwing him the football this season He is coming into a new team, but that didn't affect him much changing teams last year from Tulane to Duke. First year with a new team, he had, 4,000 passing yards, 34 touchdowns to 6 interceptions in Darian Mensah. So it's like, could you give it to Toney without giving it to the guy who threw him the football? But maybe you could, because Toney does so many other things. Like, the reason why I could see Malachi Toney winning offensive MVP over Darian Mensah is you figure Toney is probably going to throw some touchdown passes of his own. So there's going to be some touchdowns that Mensah doesn't throw to him. Toney's probably going to run for some touchdowns, that would just be a handoff from Mensah, but not a throw. So I don't know. I think I could see it going to either of those two, with Mark Fletcher being sort of the sleeper, because you figure he's going to set the tone for a very deep rushing attack. But yeah, I'm gonna give the lean to Malachi Toney even over Darian Mensah, because Malachi Toney is a receiver who is less dependent on the quarterback because he does so many other things, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna go Toney as Miami's offensive MVP this year. And you could say he was that already last year. So we're gonna go 2 for 2 with those. And then on defense. All right, if I'm going to take a little bit of a leap of faith here, because it's not a glamour position per se, but Justin Scott at defensive tackle, with his he really burst on the scene last year, primarily as a reserve. Like, he was like the third DT last year for most of it. I think he's going to step into a full-time starting role this year. Former 5-star a couple years ago out of high school. I just think with Scott's combination of the prototypical size along with uncharacteristic speed and explosiveness to create pressures, I think Scott is going to have, probably more than a half dozen sacks this year, which is not typical for interior guys. And I don't know. I just see Justin Scott turning into such a game wrecker this season. I'm going to look at him as possibly being a defensive MVP. I think that as a full-time starter, he's really going to be playing to his 5-star potential this year. So that's a possibility. And then another guy that I think could be very well defensive, and this might even be more likely if we're being real, if we're keeping it a buck. Mohamed Toure, who is, last year was still coming off of a serious knee injury the year prior. And Toure obviously had a really good season, led Miami in tackles last year. He's now not only an 8th-year collegian, but this will be his second consecutive season playing in Corey Heatherman's defense, to go along with the previous experience he had a couple years prior with Heatherman as his former linebackers coach. And with Heatherman being the linebackers coach and defensive coordinator, it's a very linebacker-centric defense. And I think Mo Toure, I could see Toure being Miami's defensive MVP this year, doing a lot from that Mike linebacker spot. So that's probably more likely, but I'm not sleeping on Justin Scott. So I think my best guess would be Malachi Toney is your offensive MVP and Mo Toure probably your defensive MVP this year. And of course, Miami's got some exciting players in the secondary as well. If Bryce Fitzgerald, if he grabs like 8 interceptions this year and wins defensive MVP, would surprise nobody. But I think Toure is probably the safest pick there. We get a great question from DatDude239, who says, hey, this one may require some time and thought, and I did give it some time and thought, but can you rate the most impactful transfer portal players from Miami? We can all probably agree that Cam Ward is number 1, but can you rate the top 12 portal players? All right, so just a note here, because I know some people will say, you got to put in, remember, Jeremy Shockey was a transfer, Bryant McKinney was a transfer, Brock Berlin. We're going portal era, folks. Like, just to make, because I would have to spend like weeks on this if we were going all-time transfers. Like, if we're going transfer portal era, which is what, like 8-9 years, I'm going to give you my top 12 there, like players who transferred into Miami through the portal. I'll give you my top 12. Now, my order's a little fuzzy. My number 1 is definitely the number 1. Some of the other ones might be out of order, but these are my top 12 guys. Cam Ward, far and away, is number 1, And I give Ward so much credit for making Miami now a quarterback destination. I don't think Miami would have landed Carson Beck last year if not for the success Ward had just had. And I definitely don't think Miami would have landed Darian Mensah if not for the success that Ward had. So Trailblazer, phenomenal year he had in 2024, number 1 overall draft pick. Cam Ward is your number 1 all the way. For my next on the list, Akeem Mesidor. Some people might have forgotten he was a transfer portal guy because he was with Miami 2022, 23, 24, 25, but he started his career at West Virginia. And Mesidor, like, he helped Miami build because he got here in 2022, so he had to go through that difficult transitional year, Cristobal's first year where we went 5-7. So he was there for 5-7 all the way through 13-3 and national runners-up. And, of course, Mesidor, I believe, is about to be a first-round draft pick, or at least should be a first-round pick. So Akeem Mesidor, to me, is right up there. Then I struggle with the order for these two. Carson Beck and Keontae Scott. Like, do you rank Beck higher because he's the quarterback and obviously, you know, touched the ball on every offensive play, or Keontae Scott, who to me, one of the best defensive backs in the country this past season, period. That pick 6 that Keontae had against Ohio State, it's one of the greatest highlights in Miami Hurricanes history. It's up there, right? It wasn't a national championship game, but that pick 6, which changed that game against the defending national champs in a game Miami was not supposed to win, and that play was the spark to winning that game, was huge, and we have Keontae Scott to thank for that. And then, of course, Carson Beck, I mean, helps elevate this program to 13 wins, tied the most in program history. The game-winning drive and the game-winning touchdown that he had against Ole Miss, the game-winning drive that he engineered against Notre Dame, had some unbelievable moments. And so, yeah, Carson Beck and Keontae Scott for me are right there. You know, somebody that you may have forgotten about a little bit, but I was a big Damian Martinez fan. I put him in there, Miami's 1,000-yard rusher in 2024. And another reason why Damian Martinez belongs on this list is his mentorship to Mark Fletcher. If you ask Fletch about it, and I have asked him about it many times, Fletch gives Damian Martinez so much credit for teaching him how to use his size, because the two guys have similar frames. The running styles are a little bit different, but Fletcher learned a lot from Damian Martinez and also the work habits and the off-field habits as well. So Damian Martinez, to me, belongs on that list. C.J. Daniels at receiver, I mean, had a tremendous year this past season, and that one-handed grab that C.J. had against Notre Dame, another one of the greatest highlights, at least in recent Miami history, that one-handed touchdown catch by C.J. at receiver. He was massive. And you notice a lot of guys from this past year make the list. That's just, I mean, you have your best season in 2 decades, and of course, I'm going to have to give credit to a lot of the guys who were just on the team as transfers. Jacoby Thomas, same thing. You know, for just having Jacoby for 1 year at Miami, he was a Cane through and through. You know, he talked about how he modeled his game after Sean Taylor, and you could see some of those traits from him. Really seemed to have an understanding of the history of the program. He did the Ray Lewis dance after making big plays. And Jacoby Thomas just had a great year. And kind of like Keontae Scott, like he raised his stock at the U, and we're thankful for that. So going back a little farther than last year, Kiko Mauinoa. You know, what Kiko, you know, the elder brother of CeCe, what he meant to this team. 2023 especially, he was Miami's best defensive player, I think by a wide margin. You know, for whatever reason, didn't have as good of a 2024, but his leadership, his maturity, you know, he was one of the guys who really rallied that locker room, and he was a leadership council guy for the time he was here. Kiko is up there. Mo Toure, you know, we talked about him as a possible defensive MVP this coming season. Last year, Toure, you remember when he put his body on the line to make that huge hit to force the incomplete pass against Texas A&M, helped save that game and help preserve Miami's victory. Mo Toure had an awesome year. Markel Bell. Now, Bell, he was a JUCO transfer, but he was in the portal, right? Like that still counts as a portal player. I'm going to allow it because Markel Bell, these past couple seasons at Miami, full-time starting left tackle this year, 2025 season, I should say. Markel Bell was tremendous. I'm going to give Jose Borregales some love because he was the start of that 5-year Borregales dynasty. I don't know if Miami, actually I think Miami had already landed Andy in recruiting before Jose transferred, but still, you had Jose came to Miami and won the Groza Trophy, and then his younger brother Andy was, the king of kicking for 4 years after that. Jose Borregales, a kicker, I give a lot of credit to. And then the other one, the final nod I'm going to throw out there is Marty Brown. I think Brown deserves some love, was an instrumental part of Miami's rushing attack this past year, the short yardage king, and also those big catches from the backfield that he had, especially in the Florida game. All that when he went off against Florida, that's when the game got away from the Gators and Miami was able to cement that victory. So that's my top 12. Maybe there's some recency bias on my list, but I did have a couple throwbacks on there to a little bit earlier on. But you guys let me know your most impactful transfer portal era transfers from Miami. Maybe you could throw De'Aaron King some love as well. I know Miami didn't win a whole lot when he was here, but De'Aaron King was a lot of fun to watch. So you guys let me know. Charleston Rambo was another one you could give some love to from a little bit farther back. But you let me know. Who are your most impactful transfers? Let's talk about Mario's mission at Miami when we come back. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on Locked On Canes. Guys, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. We're also proudly brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours just made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support Locked On Canes by saying you heard about Indeed on this show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. All right, so folks, we are going to, as mentioned, we're going to have an episode coming up later on, either today or early tomorrow, a crossover episode with Locked On Mizzou. So we'll have your full preview. Miami 1.5-point favorites to open up their NCAA tournament against the Missouri Tigers. That's going to be the last game of the first round, 10 p.m. on Friday night. Have your cafecitos ready for that one. Okay, we get one from Tallahassee Kane, who says, "Hey, Donno, this is more of a conversation piece than a question, but I'm referencing a recent episode about the Florida schools' ongoing cycle of being relevant and whether Miami is only having a short-term success." right? We talked about how Miami is clearly king in the state of Florida right now, and there have been cyclical times over the years where sometimes Miami's up, and then they're down, and then Florida's up and down. Florida State, same thing. But Tallahassee Kane points out, every time Miami has risen to the top in the past, we only moved backwards after because our coaches left soon after. Schnellenberger, Jimmy, Erickson. You could even argue that 2001 was Butch's team right after he left. The same can be said for Harbaugh, Jimbo, and others. But talk about the dynasties in our era. Ryan Day, Dabo Sweeney, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. These teams reach the top and continue to reload year after year. Is it me, or does Mario seem to be here for the long haul? He bleeds orange and green. I'm not worried about him going to another team, and probably not even the NFL, because he's our dude. And nobody is having the success in both high school and portal recruiting. The future is bright, my friend. I think that's the ultimate point. I think Mario Cristobal is the first, when you talk about the most successful coaches at Miami, and I think Cristobal, having just gotten to the Natty, you could put him in that, however long that list is, 5, 6, 7 coaches. You could put him in the list of now like most successful coaches at Miami. He's somewhere in that short list. He's the only one, when you consider Butch, Schnelly, Jimmy, Dennis. Coker was a little bit different, obviously, with the way, he was kind of the babysitter for Butch's guys, and then eventually it kind of, the wheels came off. But, Mario is the only one of that list where this is in no way, shape, or form a stepping stone for him, right? Like when, Jimmy wins a national title, and that propels him to the Dallas Cowboys. Right, Schnellenberger, he wins a national title, and that propels him to, what was it, the World Football League and whatever nonsense that was. Where Mario, this is his dream job. This is his destination. Like he's a college coach. I know that there were these weird rumors about the Pittsburgh Steelers being interested in him, which obviously went nowhere. Mario Cristobal is a college coach. Like, this is a guy who thrives in recruiting, transfer portal, roster management at the collegiate level. Mario Cristobal is not an NFL coach, and I don't think he views himself as that. And I don't think he's going to use his alma mater as a stepping stone to someday go to, Michigan or Ohio State or something. This is the destination for Mario. So your point is very well taken. I mean, I think this is Cristobal's last job, and I think it's going to be a matter of, does he want to do this for 10 years on his 10-year deal? Does he want to do it for an additional 10 after that? I think he's in his 50s right now. Does he want to do this into his 70s? Does he want to do this into his 80s like Paterno? So I think it's a really matter of that. But to your point, I don't see this, becoming a situation where Mario's ever going to wake up one morning and forget how to recruit or forget how to build a culture. So that's why I said it last week, and you only added to that point Tallahassee Kane. I don't see what Miami is doing as cyclical. I think it's a matter of, will Florida with John Summerall and Florida State with whoever takes over from Mike Norvell, because I don't believe Norvell is going to take them anywhere. Do Florida and Florida State, do they catch up with where Miami is at right now? Because I don't see Miami falling off. I appreciate all of you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and make sure to check out the Everydayer Club. You can join free for your first month with our code MARCH at lockedoncanes.supercast.com. We'll talk to you later with a crossover, Locked On Mizzou, Locked On Canes, right here on the #1 Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.